This is a challenge, my challenge. A challenge to do something I couldn't do yesterday. A challenge to turn I will to an I did. We all have a challenge. It may be physical, or maybe it's emotional. It may be something we're facing today, or it may be waiting for us tomorrow. Whatever that challenge is, it's there for us to overcome. It's not a question of if, but when will we overcome that challenge? When we do, we come out of it stronger, a better individual for ourselves, and a better individual for each other. This is my challenge.
Not even halfway through.
The Dopey Challenge. And cut. That was from this year's 2020 Walt Disney World Marathon. I ran that race even through the hot and humid conditions and finished in about 5 hours. Not my best time, but considering how hot and humid it was, they actually cut the race short by I think 2 miles because of the conditions it got to. But this video is not about 2020, this is about 2021. This weekend, or this past week, we actually had the registrations for the Walt Disney World 2021 races. And part of that includes the Dopey Challenge. I know a lot of people are doing the Dopey Challenge, having participated in it myself once. I know how difficult it can be, and some people might wonder, how do I even prepare for running 48.2 miles over the course of 4 days, where majority of that will be on the 4th day of a full marathon. So to start off, what is the Dopey Challenge? For those of you that don't know, it consists of running all 4 races for that race weekend, starting off with a 5K on Saturday, or no, not Saturday, you start a 5K on Thursday, 10K on Friday, and then you do a half marathon on Saturday, followed by a full marathon on Sunday. So if you think about it, the 26.2 miles is going to be your longest distance, but even the races before combined is not equal to that distance. Let's see, quick math. So after doing the first 3 days, the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon, you're only going to run 22.4 miles over the course of those 3 days. And on that 4th day of running, you're probably already tired. You're going to be running 26.2 miles. That's going to be a lot of mileage for the course of 4 days. Even on a good training week myself, I'm not going to hit that kind of distance over the course of 7 days in my training. But not to scare you off, I'm here to kind of provide tips from my experiences of having done Dopey once, Goofy twice, and the marathon there several times to hopefully get you better prepared for what to expect on race day. And it is early, but getting this information early is hopefully knowledge you can use during your training season. So in reality, I think this whole thing should be called the Sleepy Challenge. Assuming you trained up for these races correctly and sufficiently for what you need. The real challenge is waking up 4 days in a row and getting ready for these races and actually running those events and repeating that for 4 days. That gets exhausting. You may think, hey, it's a 5 a.m. race, it's not that bad, but actually it is, because road closures they do around the park, they often want you to arrive within the drop-off race staging area much earlier ahead of that actual 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. start time. So what that means is, if you're driving to the starting location or even staying on property and taking a bus there, you might be waking up at 2 a.m. or maybe even some might wake up 1 a.m. to get ready, get dressed, catch the bus, get in your car, fight traffic to get to that staging area, then walking over to the starting line. That all adds up in time, and unfortunately that takes away from your time to sleep and recover. So when training up for these races, you have to mentally prepare for that and remember that, okay, these races are going to be early. I need to wake up even earlier to get ready for them. So that means I should probably sleep earlier so I can get my rest and recovery overnight after each race. And that's something you need to train for. As for myself, being based in the West Coast and traveling out to the East Coast, that 3-hour time zone difference creates a jet lag. So telling myself, hey, I'm going to sleep early becomes very difficult, because I can't just tell myself I'm going to fall asleep at 9 a.m. to wake up at, or 9 p.m. to wake up at 2 a.m. and get ready for this race, because at 9 p.m. when I'm there is really going to be my 6 p.m. here, and to me I can't fall asleep at that time. So that jet lag works against me, and I know people might be traveling all over the world to get to this race. So keep that into mind when training up for this event, is that sleep is going to be a big challenge for this, and training up for that and preparing yourself for that is something that you probably want to do to make sure you're prepared for that, because you might be very well prepared and energized for doing the race, you've built up the endurance and the strength to run all 48 miles over the course of 4 days, but you might just be tired and exhausted and fatigued by the time you get to the half marathon or the full marathon. But if you prepare for that sleep pattern you need to go for, that could go a long way for you. So the other thing you want to train for is the fact that this is an endurance event. Not only are you just doing these long distance races, but the fact that they're back to back to each other with very little recovery in between is something you want to make sure you build up the endurance and train for that kind of scenario. So I like to call it a pseudo dopey or a fake dopey. So in your training sessions, you might want to early on just kind of simulate that effect of doubling up the distance over the course of 4 days. Of course, listening to your body to see what might be too much or what might be just enough. To understand what your limits are and work from there to create a baseline and then grow from that point. So maybe on your first month of training, you decide to do a simple dopey of doing on I don't know, a Thursday, a 1 mile run. And then that Friday, the next day, you do a 2 mile run, you double up that distance. So on the third day, you do a 4 mile run. And then on the final day, you do an 8 mile run. You see how you are doing with that kind of distance, and over the course of your training, you keep building up upon that. There was a point when I was doing my training for Dopey of almost every weekend I would kind of follow that pattern of 5K, 10K, and then a half marathon, and then trying to do a longer distance of a 15 to 20 mile run for that fourth day, specifically for the Dopey challenge. I think it's very important that you simulate the kind of stress your body would be going to for this event once in a while, not consistently. Rest and recovery is important for training as well, but simulating what that load would be of running pretty much doubling your distance back to back each day is something you want to do to really just understand how your body reacts and recovers to those events, so you can get used to that kind of stress and be better prepared for the event itself. So in preparing for these races, one thing you want to keep in mind is what's the course like. You look at the course maps of previous years, and the events itself look like they're fairly flat courses. Florida itself is a fairly flat location, but one thing that you don't really realize, or that isn't really shown on the map, are the overpasses and the highways that you're crossing within the resort. And in those areas, it actually becomes steep inclines and steep declines, but also you have these bank turns as well, which not only are you going up, but you might be going up with this angled footing, which becomes uncomfortable to run on because then you're now putting more weight on one leg over the other. So something to keep in mind. I don't know how you best get over those angled bank turns that you might run across. Sure, maybe you can train for it and prepare yourself for that. But just something to keep in mind. On my end, one strategy I found in kind of getting past those bank turns a lot more comfortably is sticking to the lower end of the turn or the higher end of the turn. In those areas, I feel like the road is closer to being more flat or even. They're not quite flat or even, but it's a lot more comfortable than running in the middle of that road, in my opinion. In addition, since you are running on city streets, one thing I've noticed is that the roads itself have this curvature to them. When it rains, if you have the road flat, then that rain would just puddle up on the road surfaces. But by having this curvature to the road, that rain will sweep off to the side, creating a safer driving experience. However, the challenge there is that as runners, you start feeling that unevenness in the road of, okay, if you're off to the side, one leg might be landing a little bit deeper than the other, which becomes a bit more uncomfortable after you start hitting the longer distances. To mitigate that issue, one thing I've learned is if I run towards the middle of the road, and this might apply for any kind of race, not just the Run Disney events, you hit that peak of that curvature, meaning that you don't feel as much of that unevenness and you feel like you're running more on an even surface, which to me becomes a more comfortable running experience. So it's something to keep in mind as you're running for that. Talking about the actual environment around you, one thing to remember is that you're going to be surrounded by a lot of first-time runners. Run Disney events seem to attract a lot of people who want to run for the first time and complete their marathon or half marathon for the first time. While I applaud people who are getting into the sport, one thing to remember as a runner who's more familiar with events, you might notice that people might end up walking in the middle of the road, might suddenly stop without giving some sort of warning. So that's something to just be cautious about, being aware of your surroundings, of people suddenly stopping where people are kind of gathering for the walks. That's something you just want to be aware of. And if you're watching this and you are a first time runner, a few good practices of just telling people that you're going to slow down is put your hand up, go off to the side, don't come to a complete stop, but then hand up, come to a slow jog off to the side, and then begin your walk away from like the center of the road, just to avoid creating that traffic jam of people who might want to go faster, or even if there's someone right behind you going faster, you don't want to just suddenly stop without letting them know, because they might just run into you and possibly causing injury to yourself or injury to the other runner. So just something to keep in mind, and because of that, this can just create a better running experience for yourself as well as others. Within the course itself, you're going to get a lot of other areas that might cause you to slow down a bit and create some hazards around your race experience. One of them is that there are areas where the course is narrow, quite a narrow area, so something to be aware of. But also, because you are running on roads, you're going to run into speed bumps. There are areas where there are speed bumps, and those areas are pretty well lit. You have cast members standing by to warn you, like there's speed bump, watch your step, along with speakers and dialogue ahead of time saying speed bumps ahead, or caution, speed bumps ahead. There's that voice. When you run by it, you'll recognize it. But something just be cautious about during your run at these events. So one last thing to note in terms of preparing for Dopey is the weather. Florida is known for these hot, humid summers, but in the winter, in January, the weather can be quite unpredictable. When I first did my marathon there, it was actually, I believe, 28 degrees with a wind chill that made it feel even colder. So I was thinking, I'm living in LA, I'd never get to that kind of weather out here. So how do I train for that cold weather? What do I wear? That's something you want to make sure you keep in mind, that the weather could be that cold in Florida when you do your race, but it also could be very, very warm. Like this past year, the weather was, I think it got to the 90s, and on top of that, it was very, very humid. So running a full marathon in that weather was not ideal, and in fact, it got so hot that Disney cut the course shorter to ensure racer safety, get them to the finish line sooner, before things just got way too extreme for most people. But because of that, as you're training, keep that in mind, that it may be hot. You might want to train a little bit in hot weather and just see what that's like. How does your body need to refuel in warmer weather, or in colder weather? What's running cold weather like? For me, running in cold weather, I feel that there's some difficulty in breathing, and if I'm not used to that, it impacts my performance as well. A lot of people think that just running cooler weather is going to be no problem, but if it's too cold, that can also impact your performance, and if you're not used to it, definitely is going to impact your performance. So just keep that in mind. Weather is a factor you want to consider when running the Dopey challenge, because it can be unpredictable. When I did Dopey, first day of the 5K was extremely cold. By the time it got to the half marathon or the full marathon, it was extremely warm. So that weather can range even within that course of those 4 days. So last but not least, one common question I'm seeing online is, when do I start training? I would suggest start now. Do some basic strength training. You don't have to be building up muscles, but building up that core strength, the lower leg strength. It can help you build a foundation for a solid training season for this event. Running isn't just a matter of running all the mileage you can. It is important. Mileage and distance is important, and building that up in preparation for a full marathon or even a Dopey challenge will go a long way. But having that strong core foundation and a strong aerobic base to build upon will help you out in terms of the load that you'll be putting upon yourself during training. So you can think of, if you start now, it's going to be a pre-game, a pre-warm-up to the actual training schedule you might go through. And there are plenty of training schedules in preparation for Dopey. There's a Galloway training program, which is a very popular one for runDisney's events, but there's plenty out there. You can just do a quick Google search, how to train for a marathon. That'll be good enough. In my opinion, Dopey challenge, like I said, is not so much a challenge of the distance. From my perspective, if you're trained up to do a full marathon, you'll do Dopey just fine. The biggest challenge there is going to be the sleep pattern, the sleep schedule, the rest that you want to recover from. However, when training up for the Dopey challenge, you want to make sure that you get those back-to-back days of simulating that Dopey experience, because that's going to go a long way in terms of preparing you for what that event will be like, having your body understand what it's going to be like, and you'll understand how to best recover from that. And also, as part of training, be sure you practice fueling up. It is, I think, one of the harder parts of also Dopey is that after you run a 5K, what should you be eating so you're prepared for the 10K? After the 10K, what should you eat to be better prepared for the half marathon? And finally, the half marathon, you've burned a lot of calories, you're probably already exhausted. What should you be eating to properly refuel and be very prepared for that 26.2 miles you'll be running on that final leg of that challenge? So yeah, that's the kind of my tips for preparing for Dopey. Your mileage can vary, so definitely listen to your body, see what it says, and pay attention to that. If you start feeling some sort of pain or tingle, slow it down, understand what that is. Is it soreness, or is it an injury kind of lurking up? Slow it down, take a break, rest, see a physical therapist to better understand what's going on, or even hire a coach and get their input in helping you get to that goal of running a Dopey challenge. But anyways, if you find this video helpful, hit the like button. I might be posting more content about these Dopey challenge races, even though I'm not participating. I'm happy to share any input I have with you fellow runners. I do plan on doing 2022 challenges, but at the moment I'll be focused on building up for the Chicago Marathon, which who knows, may or may not get canceled, but at the moment I'm going to keep moving forward and hope for the best for that event. Anyways, good luck on your training, and if you enjoyed, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.